I think there's multiple reasons. So, first, a lot of people in the Western world, if they have like a comfortable life, there's no reason for them to question, the current reality because they think their current reality is sound. But more and more people, I think, are starting to question that, even in places like the United States, because things are getting tougher for them. And they're like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to work. My kids are going to school. We're doing the same thing. Why should things be getting tougher? Things should be getting easier over time as, technology gets, increases. Famously, like Jeff Booth talks about, like technology being an inflationary force. And I think it's just something also ingrained in us at a very young age. I'm sure you've, talked to either your parents or people older than you, and they're like, oh, but, back in my day, if a slice of pizza and a Coke, it was a quarter or a nickel or a dime or whatever their time period was. And it's just assumed, oh, the prices of things are just supposed to go up over time. The dollar's supposed to lose, its purchasing power over time. Not that people don't question, should this not be happening? Is this a bad thing? It's just what you grow up in. It's like when you learn a language, you just kind of like, you learn it. It's just ingrained into you at a young age, and that just becomes your reality. I think it's people who are living a good life and not suffering, have no reason to question things. And it's also like a programming thing, right? We say the matrix, break out of the matrix. We've just been programmed from as soon as we asked our parents, oh, could I, have a video game? And they're like, that costs money. And it's just like, oh, so there's something called money and we just need to use it to get our video game. We don't think like anything more than that. It just works until it doesn't work. And that's why people not in developed countries that have currencies that have been hyperinflating, they get it a lot more and a lot quicker and faster than Americans. It doesn't mean they're necessarily accumulating a lot of Bitcoin. One, they may be a lot poorer, and two, they need some like stability in a stronger fiat currency like the dollar. But they understand the need for Bitcoin. It's kind of unfortunate because a lot of people understand it, either can't really save in it because they need, if they're poorer, they need to use all the money they have to survive.
You just mentioned, again, these countries are adopting that might need it more, right? Through remittances, or people are needing it in these other countries. And the El Salvador IMF thing that's going on, I know it's been kind of a contentious thing for Bitcoiners. There's obviously a lot of no coiners that have really been like, oh, see, told you, taking on more debt and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that, and just the IMF, them taking that couple billion, I think it was like 3 billion or something like that. And, they made some purchases with the, of Bitcoin as well. Do you think it's them just kind of, playing both sides and saying basically the sailor playbook, like, hey, if you're going to give us cheap debt, we'll give you a couple of these little things and then we're going to go buy Bitcoin with it? Or what do you think was going on there?
I'm not entirely sure. What I do know is, people at their core usually do what's in their self-interest, and a leader of a country is going to do what he thinks is in their self-interest. And if it's taking a few $1 billion to say these laws aren't enforceable or shouldn't count anymore, people are going to do that. I'm not sure the importance of El Salvador anymore in terms of, I think they were good, like first one through the door, and that takes a lot of courage. But, once countries like the United States or China or Russia start developing potentially either strategic reserves or some sort of like large position, the small countries who got in early, good for them. But in terms of El Salvador, I guess it's good. I mean, they should just use that IMF money to buy Bitcoin, right? Like, if they're going to do that, then brilliant chess move, not Nayib Bukele, beautiful. If they're going to do something just to kind of like sell out to central bankers and fiat overlords, like, that kind of sucks. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Do you have any thoughts on any other G7 countries that you think might happen to Bitcoin this year? And we can keep that really broad. Like, I mean, could be legal tender to all the way to strategic Bitcoin reserve, hell, even talking very positively about it. And, who knows, Canada saying, hey, this is a great thing now all of a sudden or whatever. Do you have anything on your radar for that this year?
I know if the United States starts accumulating Bitcoin, every country in the world Unless they have some like crazy ideological like leader who like hates like Trump or something like that, and as like again an ego thing, might stop certain countries because their leaders are morons. Just to say it politely, but yeah, I mean, Germany. You mentioned G7. I believe they're one of the G7 countries. They had like what 50 million or $50 billion worth of Bitcoin, something insane.
I think it was
And
50,000 Bitcoin. That's what it was.
50,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting the number wrong. 50,000 Bitcoin, and they sold it all. What, when Bitcoin was like 50,000 or 60,000? That was only like 5 months ago or something. And look how like boneheaded that looks now. And we've seen this for years. People never kind of like learn from those mistakes. But again, if the U.S. has some sort of like either by executive order or legislation mandate to hold and accumulate Bitcoin, I mean, it's what Bitcoiners started talking about over a decade ago. The game theory of countries just like rushing in.
Yeah, and that was even like some of that Hal Finney stuff too, in a way, wasn't it? I mean, it was just like kind of part of his 10 million per Bitcoin prediction. What, 15 years ago, basically?
Yeah, I know a lot of Bitcoiners, they get upset when they hear like governments are accumulating Bitcoin, or want to accumulate Bitcoin, which I get. They rather like individuals acquire it, but the cat's out of the bag. It's been 16 years now. There's very little people who haven't at least heard about Bitcoin now, like multiple times. This is what was going to happen in some form if you thought Bitcoin was going to have, either be like the global unit of account or competing with the top fiat currencies, governments. That's what was going to happen. Big governments were going to have to accumulate it for you to see price levels. It wasn't going to be like just retail getting Bitcoin to $10 million. It just wasn't. You were going to have people ingrained in the institutions who get it. It doesn't mean we should bend over or lay down, maybe is a better way to say that, and just, not fight back anything that seems to threaten what we might believe is, the Bitcoin ethos and the purpose of it, right? I mean, we've seen on smaller scales, you mentioned the block size wars and, 20,000 other, altcoins and tons of Bitcoin forks. There's been a lot of like bullets thrown or shot at Bitcoin, and, Bitcoin has prevailed, and I think it will in the future.
So in saying that, the block size wars happened, what is that, 8 years ago, 2017. And it's a great book for anyone who hasn't checked it out. But what are some of the lessons there after you kind of living through that and seeing that happen? What are some lessons there that you see that people still need to learn? Again, basically, it feels like every 4 years, like we're learning a lot of the same things over and over again. But what are some of those lessons that, in going through that people still kind of have to realize about Bitcoin?
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Good luck.